Well, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Three Technique, the college football podcast at the intersection of the X's and O's and the Jimmies and the Joes. That fine gentleman is one Trey Reeves. I'm Mitch Mason. Trey, I feel like much like the AP voters, if I had a vote without any real insight or expertise on my own end, I've got to say, based on some of the things you were telling me off camera, I think you would be an early contender for Father of the Year.
Mm. Well, I'm honored and very excited to preemptively accept that award. And you know what? If the AP voters that actually vote on the football poll are actually voting for that, then I might have an actual chance. I don't know how good I stack up. There's some awesome dads out there, but had a great weekend with the little guy. College baseball is back, so we got him out to the ballpark for the first time. He experienced a college baseball atmosphere of some sort. Had a great time. He made it through like 6 or 7 innings. It was fantastic.
Hey, anytime you can make it through more than what a third of a baseball game as a new parent, I feel like that's a win. I've certainly been in the presence of many new parents who had a plan, wanted to make it to the 7th inning stretch. Don't even know that we got the hot dog at the turn. Really,
Yeah.
didn't get to 4th inning, Phil. Nothing like that. Had to bail early on.
He's not
But
mobile yet, and that's the biggest thing. We just kind of threw him in
yeah.
the stroller. He took a long nap. He loved it. It was great.
Yeah. Hey, living life to the fullest. Parents getting to enjoy life as well. They say don't stop your life when you have a kid, right? And I think you guys are putting that into practice right there. So anyway, welcome. Come for the college football talk. Stay for the new parenting talk. We, of course, tonight are talking about our 2025 SEC and Big Ten predictions, Trey. More importantly, we are grading them out. And we had some winners. We had some clunkers. We certainly had everything in between. Should be a good show. We've been talking about doing this for a while. We had to kind of shuffle the content calendar around with some things going on. Obviously, we started our What's Next series, just had Matt Blackwell from the Crimson Captain to talk about the Oklahoma Sooners and what's ahead for them in 2026. If you've not already watched that or listened to it, it came out this morning. If you're here on the live show, it came out earlier this week. If you're listening on the podcast later in the week, but Matt had a pretty spicy prediction about Oklahoma for 2026. So that's a little tease for you. Go watch the video, listen to the podcast, figure out what Matt had to say about the defense and their championship aspirations. But Trey, a lot to get into tonight. Our run sheet is certainly full, but we also have not made a public comment on Sacramento State going to the Mid-American Conference, North Dakota State going to the Mountain West. Thoughts, feelings, and opinions from you, sir.
I think it's peak 2026 college football that a team in the West and somewhat near mountains is going to the Middle American Conference, and a team right smack dab in the middle of America is going to the Mountain West Conference. But I digress. I think those are two FCS absolute powerhouses. Obviously, North Dakota State, very long running across multiple coaches, long running dynasty at that level, and Sacramento State a little bit more early or recent arrival to the party, I should say. But nonetheless have built a really nice program out there on the West Coast. Excited to see what they can do. Obviously, both of them really feel like it's in their best interest long term to move up to this level because of the financial considerations that they're conceding. I think I saw Sac State is buying everyone's flights out to California for the first couple of years, however long that is, and then not taking any TV revenue. And North Dakota State has not as drastic of a setup, but a similar, I think, not taking a huge revenue share portion in the Mountain West. So, yeah, I mean, they obviously think that's a big opportunity for them as a program. We've seen some success, obviously, with some not lesser programs at the FCS level, but not to the extent of North Dakota State and Sac State. And the ones that have jumped up recently, they've had some really awesome success in year one in the jumps. So, excited to see what they can do. Excited to finally answer the question, because I feel like in the case of North Dakota State, it's been asked for almost a decade now what they would look like as an FBS program.
Yeah, does it not feel a little bit unstable, kind of like the 2008 like mortgage crisis where all these teams are like backloading their revenue? No, we'll get through a decade and a half before we collect any media revenue. Like that seems like a large gamble on not only the willingness of the donors to step up early, but to like sustain that funding, or at least find funding through different avenues for a long time, man.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. And that's why I was careful in my wording when I said they feel like it's the best move for their program because
People.
someone does obviously.
Yeah.
But and I'm not a Bison or a do you remember Sacramento State's
Oh,
mascot off the top of your head?
oh, are they the Hornets? What are they? Oh, live radio. I'm
We'll
on
get
it.
it done. We'll get it known by preview season. That's two more teams for us to preview this year. But
Yeah, Hornets. I was right.
there you go. Look at that. Yeah, I'm not a Bison or Hornet fan, obviously, but to me, from the outside looking in, from thousands of miles away, I would question why you wanted to make this jump, especially with all the travel that's going to be involved. You're going across the country for every conference game. It's a little less impactful, I guess, for North Dakota State. They have a few closer, somewhat closer, like Wyoming, Colorado State, all them, Air Force. But yeah, from the outside looking in, I'm like, would you rather be one of the biggest fish in the smaller pond or fighting for attention and maybe one day breaking through like a James Madison or a Tulane and getting to the college football playoff in the bigger pond? I don't know. And it seems like there's a lot of uncertainty for the G5, G6 level at this point.
Well, and maybe this research has already been done, and if it has, DM us at 3Tech Pod the link to the article or the research or wherever. If each team was dead set on making this move, like what prevented North Dakota State from just joining the MAC? What prevented Sacramento State from joining the Mountain West? Like, okay, you're moving up to the next level. Inherently, what kept us from making some sort of a geographical fit? Because now for like Sacramento State, their average distance for the conference games that they're going to play on the road is like 2,200 miles. It's north of that, in fact. Uh, their trip to Amherst, whenever that happens, it's like 2,500 miles. It's a ridiculous distance to play. It's 4 time zones away, three time zones away, I guess, for every single conference match. It doesn't make a lot of sense on its face, but then again, there's a lot of, I think, leaps and bounds and steps being skipped and corners being cut just to make sure, like you said, that these teams have a seat at the table for whatever the future of college football is.
Yeah, and don't hear what I'm not saying. I think both of these programs could be very successful in their new
Sure.
conference homes. North Dakota State, especially, I think that they have a system that works with the guys that they can get in from their area of the country. They recruit that upper Midwest really, really well and plug in guys to their system. And we've seen them give Power Four teams absolute fits when they are brave enough to schedule the Bison. So, absolutely excited to see what they can do on the field. I just think, it would be a really tough decision to me and maybe hard to swallow as a fan when you think about the rivalries you're leaving behind. You're going to not play North Dakota and South Dakota State and South Dakota every year, right? You're not going to play some of the teams that Sacramento State has on the schedule every single year. So it's a very interesting decision. I'm very interested to see how they play out. And hey, if they follow in the footsteps of the Delawares, the Missouri States, Sam Houston, I know this past year wasn't great for Sam Houston, but the year before they won 10 games. So it can certainly be done. James Madison, less than a decade removed from their transition up, and they were in the college football playoff. So the highs are certainly there, and the program infrastructure at both of these places fits FBS football. And I think maybe the mistake, or not mistake, but the visionary part of this that they're doing that some of those other schools didn't is they're only going in football, right? They're not going to have to go play a basketball game on a Tuesday night in Amherst, Massachusetts and fly all the way across the country. They're not going to have to fund the women's swimming and diving team going to a meet all the way across the country, right? They're kind of doing this in a smart way where it's just football. It's one team that's having to do all that travel. That could be a sneaky benefit too.
It's felt like that should be common sense, right? This notion that college sports in general somehow applies to the revenue and the travel and in the structure that college football has become and turned into obviously an antiquated idea. And so I think having some of these smaller schools bite the bullet and go, you know what, we will lean into this with football. I think it's just the first wave of the future. I think very, very soon we're going to have the rest of college athletics and we're going to have college football as separate entities.
Can't wait.
Man,
I
if you're
can't
what
wait personally.
if you're Matt Ince at Fresno State, are you kind of going, dang it, like had I just hung on literally one more season, right? Could have taken the Bison into the FBS, but that's neither here nor there. The point of the show isn't to lob strays at poor Fresno State. The point of this show is, Trey, to get into our grades for our preseason predictions for the 2025 season, the SEC and Big Ten. We're going to talk what we got wrong, what we got right. And let's start with the Southeastern Conference. I'll turn it over to you. Where do you want to start? You want to start on a high? Do you want to get, kind of an admission of guilt, maybe a confession letter out of the way? Where are we going?
Oh baby, let's start on a positive. Let's give ourselves some credit here. I want to start just 90 miles to the southwest of where I'm sitting right now, if we
Mm,
may. I want to trigger some folks right off the bat because I sat here with you and Lance Barton of Always Talking Ball, and I had to listen to both of you guys tell me how it was just a foregone conclusion that Texas was going to be in the national championship game. We should just crown them in August. There's no way that they can't win it all. And I had some pushback. I said, hey, guys, there is a world where 9-3 Texas exists. And Mitch, if we could just check the standings, what was the final record of the Texas Longhorns this year?
they won 75% of their games.
So that equates to 9-3 in the regular season. Got the bowl win, of course, to get to 10. But I know that we have a certain segment of our audience that will see this as just dunking on Texas. I actually am very impressed with how they progressed throughout the season. They got much better as the team played on. And if you're a Longhorn fan, you have to be encouraged with how they progress, how Arch Manning progressed throughout the year, how much of a better quarterback he looked at the end of the season versus what we saw against Ohio State. But the whole thing I always had was, hey, that's a young team relying on a lot of young talent and with a ton of people to replace. And you're going to ask them to go right into Columbus, Ohio, right off the bat and win. And you're going to have to ask them to go to the Swamp and play a talented Florida Gator team and Oklahoma and all these other teams, right? Georgia. It was a very tall task for an inexperienced Longhorn team. And that's why I was kind of trying to tap the brakes even in preview season.
Yeah, and you did nail that one. Just to set the record straight, I didn't have Texas in the championship. I had two others that were nowhere close, even farther away
I was trying to
from getting
cover
the
for you.
championship. Yeah, we'll get to that. Don't worry, I'll own up to that. But no, you were right. The inexperience, certainly at quarterback, the offensive line held Texas back. Their rushing attack was dreadful for the vast majority of the season. Now, of course, as Texas fans are screaming into their phone, into their tablet, into their listening app of choice, they obviously found their footing in the last two games of the year, and they beat Texas A&M, much to our dismay, and then they clobbered Michigan in the Cheez-Its Bowl as well. So I think there's a lot to build on and a lot to take forward into 2026. But as far as grading out this prediction, it was a high risk, high reward play, and I got to say, you get the gold star for that one.
Appreciate it. Yeah, I had to really put myself out there. I did feel like I was that meme where from Tangled where the guy has all the swords pointed in his face, and I was just kind of standing there smugly. But hey, I'm happy to get it. If I'm gonna get some wrong, like we'll talk about here in just a second, but I'm happy to
Sure.
get that one right.
Yeah, well, we'll flip over to the other side of the coin, and this one, I think this is a soft wrong here in the SEC. Let's talk the Vanderbilt Commodores, man,
Hmm.
because very similar to some other teams that we'll talk about as we go throughout this series, we could see the positives, right? You had the year where they broke through, they had the success, and the question wasn't they can't do that again, but will they do that again, right? They're not going to catch anybody by surprise, right? Diego Pavia is not going to come in and basically punk a defensive coordinator, surprise the linebacker, surprise the defensive ends when he's keeping the ball or running that pitchy woo woo triple option, right? We kind of anticipated that the league would adapt to what the Vanderbilt Commodores were doing, and they tried. But to their credit, I mean, the Vanderbilt Commodores were an effective team and a complete football team up and down the roster this year. They go 10-2. They were picked to finish 14th in the conference by the Jimmies and the Joes. You and I
I
were not
verified that, Mitch. It was actually 15th. The only team
15th.
that they were picked ahead of was Mississippi State.
That's yeah. See, and to our credit, this is where the soft wrong comes in. We pushed back on that. If you go back and listen to the episode from way back in, I don't know, May, we did push back on that. We gave the optimistic side for the Commodores and Clark Lee turning the program around. But the over-under was 4.5. And so it was, we were not going to put ourselves out there and go, you know what Vanderbilt's about to do? They're going to go 10-2. And this over-under is going to, cash within the first literally 5 weeks of the season. We did take the over. So if you listen to that part of it, congratulations, you're a little bit richer than you were in May. But yeah, I think where we got this wrong was underestimating just how complete that team could be, how the offensive line could continue to improve. The defense was very impressive at times. And you know what? They won games in a variety of ways. They won some games where they just went out and put up a bunch of points. They won some defensive slugfests as well. I'm thinking of that Missouri game on the road. So it was a very complete team that Clark Lee put out. And I think, as an SEC fan, it was entertaining and refreshing to watch this past year.
Yeah, and even as magical as last season was for Vanderbilt, right? Beating Alabama, making it to a bowl game. I think beating Georgia Tech in that bowl game in a really fun matchup in Birmingham. They were still a 6-6 or 7-5 football team that lost to Georgia State on a football field in 2024. Right. So that was not really something that we saw coming, that big of a jump. But I guess we should have listened to Diego Pavia, because at SEC Media Days last summer, he was telling anybody that would listen that they're going to be an SEC title contender. And sure enough, they were a not recovered onside kick in Austin away from probably being in Atlanta, if the math worked out, and playing for a national championship in the college football playoff.
Which is just a sentence that is still so far from, I think, the normal conversation that you have about whether it's the 12-team playoff, the 14 playoff back in the day. Like Vanderbilt, whenever Vanderbilt makes the postseason for the first time, we are still going to have to take a step back, like we did with Indiana.
Yeah.
And go, holy cow, what on earth have we just witnessed? And we'll talk about Indiana obviously later in the program. We were a little bit off on what Indiana would ultimately accomplish as well.
Real quick on Vandy, Mitch, before we move on, but I know it's February. We haven't dove all the way into these teams. Obviously, we got months to do that. But
yeah,
do you think they have staying power, or do you think that they're going to be a Diego Pavia kind of 1 or 2 hit wonder? Because they got the number 1 quarterback in the 2026 class. And that says something.
It does. And I think Clark Lee has staying power. I don't know that Vanderbilt is suddenly this powerhouse SEC program that, if you had the coaching staff leave, I don't know if they have that longevity and that same punch that what Clark Lee has developed. But I do believe in their head coach, and I believe in the vision that he set a number of years ago when we mocked him at SEC Media Days, right? I mean, he was the most viral clip of the entire offseason when he said our goal at Vanderbilt is to win a national championship. And as still grandiose as that statement is, and unlikely as it is that Vanderbilt, I think, will ever win a national championship in college football, that mindset still matters. And so if you get the spark plugs like the Diego Pavias, now the blue chip recruits like the Jared Curtises, to buy into that vision and go, why not Vanderbilt? They just won 10 games, right? I mean, we are not that far off from actually considering Vanderbilt a real threat to pull in Indiana and win it all out of nowhere.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I think they have as long as they can hold on to Clark Lee, and they might find a really nice niche for themselves in this NIL world where everybody's zigging and going after the transfers, right? Vanderbilt could come in and offer a nice package to a guy, to some really highly rated recruits, and offer them pretty immediate playing time in the SEC. And that could be something where they might be young, but they could build and kind of be a more traditional way of building, where they're reaching these heights every 3 or 4 years versus every 20 or whatever it has been in the past for Vanderbilt.
Yeah. How about we stay on this side of the projections again, doing our grades for our 2025 SEC and Big Ten predictions. We've talked about getting Texas right. Trey, you nailed them at 9-3. We just talked about getting Vanderbilt wrong. Stay on the wrong side of the equation. And, you and I underestimated the Days of Our Lives Oxford edition. Despite all the turmoil, despite all of the weirdness that went on, the hostage situation with Marty Smith on that one long weekend, Ole Miss made it to the playoff and was oh so close to playing for a national championship.
Yeah, and both of us had them 7-5. I checked our graphics today, going back to August, and man, I think the rationale for both of us was, hey, they really went all in on 2024. They had those elite transfer portal classes. They'd sent so many guys to the NFL draft, lost a couple guys to the portal as well that they thought were going to be big contributors. Austin Simmons was going to come in and be the starter, and we were a little, we thought Lane Kiffin knows what he's doing with quarterbacks, but this is an inexperienced guy, and it's really hard to start a guy with no experience in the SEC. Little did we know a guy named Trinidad Chambliss from Ferris State was going to come in and just be an absolute revelation. And oh, by the way, he's going to be able to help Todd Golding be start on the right footing with an experienced quarterback, because apparently there's no more eligibility rules.
Pete Golding.
Pete
And
Golding, thank you.
yes,
I'm in basketball. I'm in basketball.
I was
I
gonna
got Florida
say, I was like,
State on my
oh,
mind.
yeah, we've just crossed SEC fan bases there. Yeah, he's back. All it takes, evidently, during an NCAA injunction is just have a judge on the bench who also graduated from your school, and things go your
Unless your
way.
player played in the professional league in this country, then that's the only line that we've been willing to
That's
draw.
too far. That's too far. That's right. Then you have the SEC commissioner switching sides and siding with the NCAA. Anyway, different sport, different drama. We're not TMZ, but you're right. I mean, I very distinctly remember going, I hate to bet against Ole Miss's offense, but at the same time, like if they weren't able to get it done with the defensive pieces they had last year, they did not reload, we thought, to the caliber that they needed to, specifically in the interior of the defensive line, right? I mean, I remember saying, hey, Walter Nolan is not walking through that door to bolster your run defense, to get after the passer. And it didn't matter. I mean, the defense was not great this season. That was kind of the wart that they had to cover over at various times. But the offense was so explosive, and you're really one stop away in the fourth quarter from beating Georgia in the regular season and feeling like, you know what, this Ole Miss team is a sneeze away from maybe being the best team in the country.
Yeah, and I feel like we're gonna remember this season, unfortunately, more for the drama with Lane Kiffin, and that's
Sure.
really sad, because after he left, they made it all the way to the semifinal when no one really gave him a shot in that Sugar Bowl against Georgia. So there's a lot to like about this program, and I'm interested to see if they can keep it going moving forward. Obviously, like you said, it was an offensive-led program for these years under Lane Kiffin. They're going to shift to a defensive-minded head coach. How does that look out? But I'm interested to see, especially if they have a firm foundation with a very experienced quarterback. They might have the best. They're going to have a top 2 or 3 quarterback in the SEC next year, going into this year, and that's going to be that's going to say a lot and go a lot towards what the final result is this year. But man, I just hate that the drama is going to be what we remember from this season. And if you're like me, I'm a husband right now that has a wife that's really swept up in the Guthrie case. I don't know if I'm alone in that. Not to make light of that very tragic situation, but if you're a husband that wants to judge your significant other for being swept up in that, just remember how you were around Thanksgiving with the Marty Smith saga, and you might check yourself a little bit.
Man, those Twitter updates were immaculate. The memes were golden, and I think that's one of the most famous days in college football Twitter history. That one, I think, will be remembered fondly for a lot of us, especially if you were not an Ole Miss fan. That was interesting day. Let's come back to the right side of the coin here, and we'll hit these in kind of rapid succession. Things that we got right in the SEC. I'm going to absolutely call out a victory lap here for myself with Auburn. I was not buying the Auburn hype this year. I did caution everybody from melting down on Jackson Arnold. And I think I could have my cake and eat it too, because I was saying, hey, the potential is there. I believe that this kid can still be a decent quarterback, but I did not believe that he was going to be a decent quarterback under Hugh Freeze behind this offensive line for Auburn. I did not think that the Ferraris out wide with Cam Coleman, who's obviously now at Texas. And I'm forgetting the kid that's transferring to I've forgotten the other transfer out of Auburn, but great wide receiver class, and they just didn't get used the way that ultimately was going to be needed to lift Auburn to a team of relevance this year. It's 3 straight years now that I've been correct on Auburn's over under. So I feel like I've got things on the plains kind of very well pegged. That one feels half decent. How about South Carolina? We both agreed on this. We did not believe that Shane Beamer would actually string great seasons together, which, if you remember, was not a popular take in the preseason. We were getting all kinds of critiques and questions and doubts about how on earth can you watch what South Carolina just did and the untackleable Lenora Sellers dominating teams left and right and not buy stock in the Gamecocks. We got a front row seat to South Carolina blowing the largest lead in SEC history when our Texas A&M Aggies came back. It just felt like the culture wasn't there. It felt like the belief wasn't there. When things got tough, that Gamecocks team quit.
Yeah, and it was a team that was right there in so many games. They could have beaten Alabama. They obviously could have beaten Texas A&M. Like you said, the talent I think is there, but I just really question that coaching staff, man. Like they just Shane Beamer has little man syndrome, and I think that's the worst possible thing you could have as a big time head coach. The way that he was just walking off the field like he had clinched a spot in the SEC title game at halftime at Kyle Field. That's just always going to be etched in my memory of him until he actually accomplishes something. That was a rough look, and combined with the mid-quarter interview, like it rough look to say the least. And I don't have their moves on the top of my head in the transfer portal. I'm trying to remember if they did anything big because so many moves happened, obviously, but it feels like they're just going to try to run it back next year.
I think that was what I took away from it too was, hey, we got Lenora Sellers back, Dylan Stewart's coming back from the pass rush. The problem was last year, like they didn't really have anybody to support either of those guys. And
Yeah, the
you're
top
right.
end talent is absolutely there, and there's
It was a
no
depth
depth.
issue. Yeah,
Yeah,
it was a huge depth issue. So, will Nick Harbor ever break out? What is this, part 4 now? Like I've forgotten how long he's been in Columbia. We know he can run fast in a straight line, but like, will he be a difference maker for the Gamecocks? I don't know. And yeah, you need your coaching staff to actually be able to cash the checks that they write verbally. They did get rid of their offensive coordinator, so maybe that's a step in the right direction for the longevity of that program. But all that goodwill that got built up in 2024 for Shane Beamer, I feel like it all went out the door and got left in College Station. Probably didn't even make the trip to College Station, to be quite honest. But he's got to win some games in 2026. Otherwise, we might be on hot seat alert for sure. Marty Smith might get a new assignment come the end of 2026. So elsewhere, you put together this list, the Jimmy's and Joe's takes of note. Why don't you walk us through that before we switch over to the Big Ten?
yeah. Jimmy's and Joe's had Texas first. We hit on Texas already, but LSU 4th and Florida 5th.
Yeah,
Both fired their coaches in the middle of the season. LSU had a lot of confidence coming into the year, but they did not have the offensive line to back it up. And I remember sitting here with Chris Lee, and he was kind of the first one that really alerted me to that issue. And we had multiple guests on about the SEC this offseason. They were very split on LSU. Chris was very down on the Tigers. Peter Burns, can't blame him. That's his team, right? But
that's right.
he was very high and painting the positive case. But that offensive line was a problem all year long, and it just goes to show that it doesn't matter who you have on the outside, who you have slinging the ball. Nussmeier is a really good quarterback when you give him time, but they had nobody blocking, and that was none the more evident than when they played A&M right before Brian Kelly got fired. Florida, the darling of the offseason based on DJ Lagway's finish in 2024, but just another team that you feel like had the top end talent, but just not the depth of the coaching to really get it done when rubber hit the road. You saw the ceiling when they beat Texas. You saw the ceiling when they competed with Ole Miss, made that a close game down the stretch, competed with Georgia right there in a lot of other games, but just not the coaching to get it done. And then on the positive side, Oklahoma and A&M, the Jimmies and Joes had them 8th and 9th respectively. Sure. We were a little bit lower on both of those teams as well. I think we had the ceiling we had both the ceiling for Oklahoma at around 8-4, I think. And maybe I'm just speaking for myself, but the floor for Florida around 8-4, 7-5, and those ended
Yeah.
up flipped. Oklahoma had the quarterback play they needed. They had the elite defense really that they needed to get it done. And Texas A&M, obviously the season didn't end how Aggie fans wanted to, but that was the most fun I've had as a fan from August 31st to November 16th or whatever in my entire life as an Aggie fan. So I think that those were missed in the negative direction. We just kind of missed on the ceilings of both of those teams.
Yeah, agreed. It's been very rare that I've had a positive Texas A&M birthday. I was born right in the middle of November, so usually it's on to next year by the time my birthday swings
Blame
around. But
basketball.
that's right. But a great job by Mike Elko. Texas A&M again. I think the comments and the headlines throughout the offseason will probably take another negative, sour connotation the way that they did after they lost in the Las Vegas Bowl to USC, and that was a lot of friendly fire too. A&M fans were not happy with the way that last season ended, and deservedly so. To go 1-4 in your last 5 games, that was not a great showing for the Aggies. This year, obviously, you put together an 11-0 start. You're right there in it for an SEC championship for the second year in a row. And those are the positives that are very easy to paper over when then you talk about finishing with losses to Texas and the home playoff loss to Miami. But I still think if year two taught us anything with the Aggies, you look at the positives, you look at the building blocks. We'll see what the coaching staff looks like. Obviously, they're replacing their offensive and defensive coordinators. Defensive coordinator, not really a big deal. Jay Bateman, excuse me, wasn't doing much other than coaching linebackers. But the Colin Klein move to Kansas State will be something notable for sure. So anyway, loaded SEC. Those are really the highlights. I mean, we could have gone through so many more throughout this conference, but this is a dual episode. We'll move on to the Big Ten. What we got wrong, what we got right. Trey, I think we have to start on the wrong side of things. If you're talking Big Ten, really hard to bury the lead here and ignore Indiana going 16-0, winning their first ever national championship. Trey, if I may, just a reading from our preview series, and I believe I wrote this, and I quote: Indiana can go under the total 8.5 wins and still be a very solid team. I think most people will lean towards the over here, but I believe that the depth of the Big Ten is finally showing itself. I do not think they lose to both the Illini and the Hawkeyes, but I do think they get clipped by one of them, Iowa in my case. With presumed losses at Oregon and Penn State, you could be home free with the over if Indiana doesn't step on a landmine. Whether it be a sneaky UCLA squad or even a desperate Wisconsin, I'm going to roll the dice and take the under. What's that meme? The child sleeping in bed and there's like the soldier standing over them, taking the grenades and the knives and the bullets. Like that's kind of what I feel like for our show, considering I wrote that preview. Um, yeah, I was wrong on Indiana, and I heard about it too last summer. I remember when we published those graphics, a lot of Indiana fans were like, "What the heck, man? Like we make the playoff, and you're immediately dooming us to just a little bit better than over 500." Very similar to Vanderbilt. I thought that it was a little bit of shock factor that they got away with. Credit to our boys Ty and Lance at Always Talking Ball. They did a deep dive into that offense and how they expected Indiana's offense to be championship caliber all the way back in June or July, whenever they did that breakdown. I just didn't fully grasp, I guess, and accept the notion that Kirk Signetti was him. I think that's what it boils down to.
I don't think you're alone in that either, especially after that Notre Dame playoff loss last in 2024, the Ohio State game in 2024. There were a lot of orange flags for what Indiana was building, I
Yeah.
guess. But hey, to give you a little bit of credit, Iowa was right there. That was one of the closest games that
Yep.
Indiana played.
That was almost the landmine. Yeah.
It was almost the landmine, and they almost lost to Penn State. Now it wasn't. We didn't know that it was going to potentially break like a 6-game losing streak for Penn State, but
Right.
they needed a acrobatic, amazing catch from Omar Cooper to beat Penn State. So you were almost right on a couple of those, but no, look, I don't think anybody other than I guess our boys that always talking ball on the offensive side of the ball really saw this Indiana wagon coming. I think that most people thought that if they could get back to 8-4, 9-3, maybe sniff around at 10-2, that's a fantastic win for Kirk Cignetti. But he turned in one of the greatest performances as a coach of all time, and we got to tip our hat to that and just say, yeah, we really we're not familiar with their game, to quote the great Shaquille O'Neal.
That's right. And I think like that Illinois game off the top of the year, what we can transition over to your correct prediction on Illinois in just a second. But that Illinois game off the top of the year, I mean, was truly the Simpsons stop, he's already dead meme. It got out of hand so fast and went so bad so quickly for the Illini. I think that was the first time that we really took a step back and went, okay, this Indiana team might be different. The way that they just continued to bludgeon most of their opponents, obviously got out by the skin of their teeth against Iowa and Penn State. But to hear the Indiana guys kind of rehash the season, when they got asked, when did you know Fernando Mendoza was the guy? When was he the guy that could win a Heisman, could win a championship? They said that Iowa game, the way that the offense was not clicking on all cylinders, and Mendoza had to turn to his legs and finishing runs through defenders to get first downs. That's when the locker room, it seems like, fully bought in. And obviously they escape with a very close win, but in the long run, it ended up being the rocket fuel that propelled them to greatness and in that first national championship.
Yeah, and the fact that they just did it with the lack of perceived recruiting talent that they did too, I think just makes it even more special. We've talked about it so much. Give them their flowers one more time, but Cignetti's built a wagon, and he doesn't appear to be going away anytime soon. I don't think he's going to be a 1 or 2 year wonder. I think he's going to be building that program for the long haul. They've got the investment that they need. They are going to be at the center of all of our conversations from here going out.
Yeah, they sure are. All right, let's transition over to Illinois. I'll give you your victory lap because you had to stand up on the wall here and you had to face the Huns and you had to read the comments, and it wasn't always pretty. Garrett and I were a little bit higher on Illinois, and to set the stage, Illinois had never gone over 8 wins in back-to-back seasons, I believe, in program history, right? They finish 2024 with a great bowl win over South Carolina. Brett Bielema is antagonizing the Gamecock fans and Shane Beamer all throughout that game. And that was the fuel, the go button that Illinois needed, we thought, to turn that into 9-10 wins. I mean, they were a playoff team in a lot of brackets out there preseason. But Trey, you had the contrarian take, and you said, "Hey, let's pump the brakes on that, and look at the bigger picture."
Yeah, they had a lot of receiving talent to replace after 2024, and I don't think that they had, that level of talent just walking right back into the door. And boy, did I take some heat from some angry Illini fans. I don't mute a lot of people on Twitter, just as a principle, because it's not real life. I don't really care if you're just gonna yap at me. That's totally fine. That's what the app was made for. But I actually pressed the mute button on that day because it was just getting ridiculous. That if I didn't reply in 2 seconds, I was an absolute fraud and just couldn't defend any takes that I had. So
Yeah,
it was insane. I'm very happy to say that I predicted the Illini to go 8-4, which historically is a fantastic season for the team in Champaign. And they finished the regular season at 8-4. So hats off to all the people out there. You know who you are that really came after me. Hope you're having a good basketball season. I haven't checked in on Brad Underwood and the boys, but hopefully it's going better for you than football season ended up.
that's a very, very, very fair take. And yeah, I mean, listen, if you're gonna put out content, you got to be able to take the punches. And
Absolutely.
we
Yeah,
certainly take
I
our
live for that usually. It was literally
yeah.
just what losses do you have? And then if I didn't reply in like literally a minute, it was like, oh,
Yes.
spam me with 5 more tweets. Like,
Yes, no, exactly. And I was getting to say, like, you have taken those punches. We've taken those punches with varying fan bases, and so it does feel good when we can circle back and say, hey, remember July, remember August when we had this exact discussion. So let's flip over to the other side of the coin. Now we kind of tease this, you kind of tease this. I had to make an apology video in week 4? I mean, it was early, man. I had the Iowa Hawkeyes as I think they were my 11 seed, something like that, 10, 11 seed, playing the Texas Longhorns in the first round. And the offense was so unwatchable early that I just had to bite the bullet and make an apology video early on. Now, the Hawkeyes stayed in contention. There were a lot of people that were saying, hey, you know what? This Hawkeyes team, they progressed. The offense went from 72nd in scoring to 54th. Like, that's kind of unheard of when it comes to Iowa Hawkeyes offense in the last several years. But it just never came together the way that I think a lot of us expected. I certainly bought the hype, right? Mark Gronowski's going to be throwing all over the lot. He ended up being way more effective with his legs than his arm this past season. And, as a result, I think it was still a one-sided Iowa offense that was good, not great. And, for a team that was supposed to upset Oregon and take down Penn State, give Indiana all that they were worth, that one felt like we came up short for sure.
Yeah, and it's another game. It's another team, I should say, that was right there in a couple games,
They
right?
were.
They were right there with Oregon in a slop fest, or right there with Indiana, like we talked about. You really got let down by the Mark Gronowski hype. I
I
think
did.
everybody that was kind of looking for a dark horse playoff team was like, hey, this kid from South Dakota State, man, he had a great, fantastic season for the Jackrabbits last year. Now he's coming up and going to revitalize that Iowa offense. Dude couldn't throw the ball 5 yards
I know.
downfield without throwing it at somebody's ankles. It was just ridiculous the amount of hype that he got in retrospect. And I don't know if he was dealing with some injuries or if it was just a jump to the speed of the FBS game. I don't know, man, but that was rough. I think that's the biggest take that I was leading that hype train too. I was right there with you. I was like, man,
I
that's
know.
a fun quarterback pickup. I think we were talking like historically, when has Iowa had a better quarterback than Mark Gronowski? And I think we can maybe go back to 2024 to see when they had a better passing performance.
I hate that. I hate that so much. Again, they improved scoring the football. It was like Gronowski had what, 9 straight games with a rushing touchdown. So he was getting the ball in the end zone. It was just not through the air, which is obviously what was kind of the key to success and the whole thesis behind getting to the playoff.
It's kind of a big part of offensive football in 2026 if you
You
want
know,
to
it
chuck the ball
is.
downfield just a little bit.
It is, unfortunately. Hey, Ohio State though, they might be running the I formation a lot this year. So look out. Ground and pound offense might be coming back in a big way. Do you want to finish out the wrong predictions? Do you want to go back right? Where would you like to take this next?
Let's finish out wrong so we can end on a good note when we each
That's
have
smart.
one to be ashamed of here.
That's smart. Yeah, 40 chess there. I'll go first. I had Penn State going undefeated. I not only had them going undefeated through the regular season, I had them beating Ohio State twice to claim a Big Ten championship. I had them getting to the national championship game behind one Drew Aller. And I did have them falling short. I had Clemson as my national champion, but yes, I could not have been more wrong. Next question.
Penn State and Clemson famously did face off in the postseason this year.
It did. They did. And hey, Penn State won that game. So, listen, we were in the right we were literally in the ballpark sort of. But
Literally,
yeah,
they played in Yankee Stadium. You were
I
literally in
know.
the ballpark.
Yeah, without a doubt, my two biggest whiffs on the season were opposing forces in my hypothetical national championship game between Penn State and Clemson. It's hard to simulate in my favor. It is hard to simulate a catastrophic meltdown to winless UCLA. Did not have James Franklin obviously getting fired halfway through the year, but here we are again. If you're going to create content like we do, you're going to get some wrong. You're going to break some eggs. And I broke a pretty big one in Happy Valley.
Yeah, absolutely. You're not going to bat 1,000. If you're batting 500, I think you're doing fantastic
Yeah,
for a lot of these teams, especially in the portal era. But shout out Garrett. He's not here to get his victory lap tonight, but he was the one of us that was tapping the brakes pretty aggressively
he was.
on Penn State.
He was, yeah. I mean, we got into it over I forgot what the quarterback statistics with Drew Aller, right? I was all aboard the advanced analytics. Like, hey man, listen, like eventually the stock's gonna take off, right?
Well, they had
It's
that
just
receiving core too. Like we were all excited about the transfer receivers, and
the
man,
mismanagement of that wide receiver core this year. And I'm so glad Andy Kotelnicki's gone. He's back to Kansas, I believe. Yeah, they just needed a fresh start in Happy Valley. I think that whole team, stem to stern, was criminally mismanaged. Jim Knowles was not the difference maker we expected for the defense, and it wasn't the defense's fault. That offense was just horrific in the biggest moments. But yeah, fresh start for Penn State. I'm probably gonna have to take a year off. I sold all my Knowles coin at the absolute peak. We took a hit. We took a big loss here. Had to cut our losses with Penn State. I think I'm gonna officially even take that stock off my watch list for a little bit. Just get some fresh eyes on things.
Well, the one I gotta own, it's not as drastic as Penn State, I must say, but I was not on the Oregon train until very, very late.
Yeah.
I was thinking they had a very strong possibility of going just like Texas. I said with Texas, 9-3, maybe even 8-4 if the
Hmm.
cards fell the right way. I looked at the schedule and saw trip to Happy Valley, trip to Iowa City to take on the Hawkeyes, right? Indiana coming to Eugene. Lots of very interesting games. But man, I also just really didn't love the thought of Dante Moore as a starting quarterback. And look, maybe I'm not going to say that's been vindicated because I think he's a very talented quarterback. He's going to be one of the best in college football next year. But
Hmm.
we saw in the college football playoff a little bit of the things that I was concerned about. That's all I'll say about that because
Yeah.
Oregon did far exceed my expectations this year. Obviously, 11-1 in the regular season. I was not really in on them. I kind of kept expecting the other shoe to drop until they beat USC. Once they beat USC, I actually swung all the way to the other side. I predicted them in my playoff prediction bracket once it came out to go all the way to the national championship game. Indiana took care of them, obviously, very effectively in the semifinals. But yeah, I think I learned my lesson with Dan Lanning, and I don't think that I can doubt him again. I think that he has that program as long as they don't have just a murderer's row of a Big Ten schedule where they draw every other contender. You kind of got to pencil him in for at least 10 wins at this point.
Hard not to believe in a head coach who looks like he rips lines right before he takes the field.
Absolutely.
That's the energy I want in my program for sure. Elko gives that to us in maybe some different ways for sure. But yeah, Lanning's doing a good job. And, Oregon fans were, I think they handled the loss to Indiana well, both losses, I guess, to Indiana well. But I remember commenting and maybe even retweeting one of their fan accounts and saying, listen, like, it's going to happen for Oregon. I think I said something like it hasn't happened or it won't happen until it does. And Oregon is squarely in that small basket of teams every single year that I will consider a contender. Really until proven otherwise at this point, because of all the things that you just said, the talent, the way that they put the team together. They're also going to go through some staff changes, right? Tosh Lapoy is now at Cal. Will Stein is obviously down at Kentucky. You guys did a video on that not too long ago. So some changes for sure. But as long as Dan Lanning's at the helm, Dante Moore will have another year. He obviously forwent the NFL draft this year. He
Probably got
declined
some
the
good advice.
he did. He declined the option to go third overall to the New York Jets in 2026, so he can go third overall to the New York Jets in 2027. Basically, I think is how things line up. All right, let's finish on a positive note. I'll hit a couple very quickly here. Just honorable mentions. I'd like to shout out our predictions on Northwestern, on UCLA. To an extent, we were not buying the over/under hype on them. And then Malik Washington, I think, is a great place to talk about. We talked about Malik Washington as this blue chip quarterback coming in. He was probably the best thing that Maryland had at quarterback really since Tua Tagovailoa, right? He was going to be a unique spark in this offense, and he
Talia,
delivered
right?
early. Talia, I'm sorry, yes,
Yeah.
Talia. My my apologies. But Malik did everything and more that you wanted early on for the Terrapins. And I know the season crashed and burned, obviously. And again, we're getting, a lot of questions about Mike Loxley and his future there. But I really do like QB1 in College Park going forward.
Yeah, I think he is the reason Mike Loxley still has a job because he
I
can
think so.
pitch that, hey, I can get with this guy for one more year and we can hold on to him if I stay. But man, yeah, it was not his fault. Some of those collapses that they endured throughout that year. It was very, very hard to watch Maryland just repeatedly give up big leads throughout the
Yeah.
season. But We'll see. If you have a piece like Malik Washington, though, you are going to have a fighting chance in pretty much any game you go out against.
Yeah. Northwestern, how about the Fighting Wildcats? David Braun does it again. He gets them to another bowl game. And where I feel like I take credit here is I gave you the case for this offense being able to match the defense at times, right? It wasn't always pretty. Their offense certainly let them down at times. The defense had some uncharacteristic gaffes. But overall, this was a more complete team than what Vegas was telling you they would be in the preseason. And man, we got the full experience with Preston Stone, right? We knew he was going to be energetic. We knew he was going to be a spark plug. I don't know that we saw, the 4 interception games coming multiple times through the year. That was hard to watch at times, but it was cool to see Wildcat fans as they get ready to go into the new stadium. I think have some positive momentum and some reason to believe behind David Braun and the boys.
And they finally won at Wrigley. They
They
broke that
did.
curse. So the sky is the limit.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I think I'm buying stock on Northwestern. Washington and Iowa. I obviously a big gaff on Iowa to the playoff, but I will absolutely collect my cash out on the over 7.5 for both the Washington Huskies and the Iowa Hawkeyes. You and I were high on the Hawkeyes, but also we were high on what Jed Fish and Desmond Williams could do at Washington. This was a team that, Trey, we were really trying to make the case for them to be a playoff contender at multiple times this year. And it felt like every time we said, okay, now we ride. Now Purple Rain takes effect. They let us down. But listen, over is still the over.
Yeah, a good building season and bringing back a ton of talent too. So 2026 could be where they actually step up. We've done that a couple times throughout the history of this show where we're just a year early on a team. So
Right.
watch the Huskies. If they can get rid of the off the field dysfunction of their quarterback wanting to, have eyes for other teams, then sky's the limit.
Yeah, never wrong. Just early, and I think that's a great place to end that segment there. You put together the Jimmy and Joe takes of note. Obviously, Penn State was the top team in the Big Ten. Illinois was fourth. You took your victory lap there, and then Indiana sixth, higher than what I had them, but obviously lower than a historic undefeated season. Who could have seen that coming? But with that, any final words as we wrap our grades for the SEC and Big Ten predictions? What a run!
I think I've been inspired to go check the math on our over under predictions because we did do an over under pick for every team. I think
We
all
did.
all FBS teams. So I'll try to have that by our next episode, our ACC Big 12 episode. I'll have the numbers on what our actual record was for that.
Yeah. Oh well. I look forward to seeing how humbling that may be because it's really easy to go. Yep, got that one, nailed that one. Oh, sniped that one. Also very humbling to see the losses mount up. So let us know where you net out on some of these predictions. Were you rocking with us back in the summer? We sure hope you were. If you were not, if you found the show since then, plan is to run it right back. We did some of the most elaborate, detailed preseason coverage, I think, anywhere in the country. We had a full breakdown for every single team, Trey. We had guests for every conference, multiple guests for conference in several cases. And yeah, gave you the lay of the land on all 136 teams. I guess last year we got to add 2 more.
138. Let's go.
Tell the boys at EA to get on it. They've got to add the Bison and the Hornets to the college football game. But yeah, obviously a lot of moving parts and pieces. We really appreciate you guys joining us this entire year. And like we keep saying, we're gonna break some eggs, but at least we can laugh about it on the other side. And that is our promise to you. We don't hide our mistakes. We'll revisit them. We'll laugh about them. We'll get your takes on them as well. But for Trey Reeves, I'm Mitch Mason. Thanks so much for hanging out with us. Until next time, so long.